I'm George Curtis. Welcome to It's Your Law. Each week it's my privilege to bring you guests that have some expertise, some unique experience, and some wisdom about our laws. How we make them, how we enforce them, how they sometimes work, often don't work, and can be improved. It's the guest show. And it's a treat for me today. I've seen this young attorney's picture on a billboard for a couple of years, and he offers to do criminal work. And I think that's as high a calling as there is in the practice. But poor people are the ones who get arrested more often than rich people able to pay lawyers. And so I really was curious, considering his reputation as a very successful criminal defense lawyer, how in the hell is he making a living? And his name is Ryan Ulrich, and we're going to find out today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, George.
What got you aimed at law school and the law?
Well, what got me aimed in law school is I went to undergraduate at Wisconsin La Crosse, and I showed up as a business major. Realized relatively quickly that I hated it, and sort of accidentally ended up in a mock trial class where, obviously mock trial, you're just putting on a case and it's almost like acting, but I realized I really enjoyed it. I excelled in it a little bit, and then I changed my major to political science. Took a lot of law classes through that, and then ultimately that led to the direction of law school.
And you couldn't go to law school at La Crosse, so what happened next?
Well, I went to the University of Wisconsin in Madison, not right away. I got married in the interim, and my wife went to the University of Michigan for her graduate courses, and of course they didn't think as highly of me there as they did at Wisconsin, so I had to hold off for a couple of years, and then I went to law school in the fall of 2003 and finished in the spring of '06.
Well, I have a degree from the University of Wisconsin Law School, and one of the things I remember about it is that we didn't study any statutes, any nuts and bolts and things like that. We kind of studied a philosophy of law. What was your experience?
Yeah, and I think that's a great way to phrase it. And one of the things I remember them saying is, we're not necessarily teaching you what the explicit law is, but it's how to think about the law so you can interpret it, because the law changes, right, over time. And so learning what a statute or a law is in 2003 may not apply to 2022. But one of their philosophies there was something called law in action. And law in action, it means a lot of things: how the laws affect regular people, what considerations and public policy reasons are behind enacting the law. But one of the things that I took away from it really is how it affects people on a day-to-day basis, real people. And the most common way I think that people have the interaction, I think, is through the criminal justice system.
Well, unfortunately, I think that's true. Of the first 100 people that got out of your class, I'm curious as to how many of them are still serving the public practicing law, and how many have gone into sure things like working for the government, working for General Motors, working for an accounting company or a collection company, and how many of them have benefited from the education but decided it was more profitable to take a safer direction than offer your services to whoever walked in the door.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to think about it. And when I graduated in 2006, I had no illusions of becoming a criminal defense attorney. I took a job in Milwaukee at a smaller insurance subrogation firm and did that for about 2 years. while I slowly convinced myself that I could open my own practice. Well, of course, when you open your own practice, you have 0 clients and the phone's not ringing. And so the first thing I did was I visited the public defender's office and told them to load me up with as many cases as they had. So right about there, I've got about a half dozen clients. And my goal was to build a practice, landlord, tenant, personal injury, family law, and criminal defense was just going to be what sort of got me there. But over the course of time, I really felt, I don't want to say a calling, but I thought I was good at it, relating to people and relating their stories. And there's much more of a human element to it than, I guess, pushing paper.
Oh, absolutely. I've been practicing law for 63 years. I haven't been a criminal defense lawyer recent years. I've just had too many bills to pay because that is not the way to get rich. But I still have people calling me and saying, you must remember, you bailed me out of a real fix in 1970, such and such. Well, sometimes the name rings a bell. Most often it doesn't. But I feel good. I feel I have a purpose for being here on terra firma, that people think I helped change their lives, and you get to experience that every day.
I do, and much like you just said, every once in a while, I'll get a phone call, and even more surprisingly, somebody will just drop by my office, and they'll walk in. They'll say, hey, I was in the neighborhood. You're still in the same office you were in 10 years ago. Do you remember helping me out? And they're really proud of themselves to say, hey, I finished whatever sort of term of supervision or incarceration, and now I've got a job and I've got a family, and I've done all these things. And for some reason, they're thanking me for that. But obviously, we have a great deal of impact upon people's lives and the trajectory that that's going to take when this problem, this criminal problem they have, is over.
Absolutely. We have to take our first break, but when we come back, I want to hear, because I want our audience to hear, the calling of representing people accused of crime, and why I think, and apparently you do too, it's the highest calling in our profession. We'll be right back. Welcome back to It's Your Law. I'm George Curtis, and my guest is attorney Ryan Ulrich. And Ryan defends people accused of crimes, and I'm proud of him. But what I want to find out now is I understand that your wife's a writer, daughter of a good friend of mine, and together you've written a book.
Well, I wouldn't say together we've written it. She's the writer. I'm just the one that sort of provided some of the stories. But yes, my wife is Laura Jean Baker, and her father was Ralph Baker, who, of course, was the head of the Winnebago Mental Health Institute for about 2 decades, I believe. In any event, over the course of my career, I would come back and just tell stories about my day, about my clients, about this case or that case. And of course, being a writer, she found all this to be, very interesting, and started taking notes. And what she really realized, I think, and she helped me realize, is really how similar a lot of my clients' lives or stories, or what they've been accused of doing, really are to what our lives were like. And there was a real fine line between what my clients had done and things that I'd done or things that we've done. And so over the course of time, she started writing chapters of a book. And the book is called The Motherhood Affidavits. And what it does is it examines her life as a mother, our lives as having 5 children, raising them, the struggles that everybody has in raising a family. And in each chapter, she really focused on one of the cases that I was working on, and the personal relationships in that case. And each chapter, she very carefully curated it to parallel the things that were going on in our lives, to really examine that these people here who society are deeming criminals, they're really not that different from you and me.
Well, you and I have found that to be absolutely true in life. Is that book available?
It is. It is actually, it was published by a press in New York City. I remember when she had it published, she had to fly out there and meet some people and shake some hands. It's available on Amazon. I don't know if it's still in bookstores. This was about 4 or 5 years ago now. But it's absolutely available. And I think it's a remarkable book. And if I had to sum up what that book's about, it's a book about empathy. And I think empathy is the most important aspect of my practice. And I think it's an important aspect of the criminal justice system, that prosecutors are prosecuting people not as what they are on paper, but as they are in human beings. Defense attorneys are defending them to make sure that getting through whatever alleged crime that they've committed, when they can get through that and have a better life. And when judges sentence people, to make sure that that sentence really reflects who they are and who they've been in society, what their needs are for rehabilitation, and how to set them up for success in the future. And I think without empathy, it's very easy to treat my clients as what I refer to as other, as not human beings, as not like you and me. And if you're able to sort of disassociate from really the human, that's when sentences become too punitive, and that's when I think we're really doing a disservice to society.
Well, you look at law as a tool for the protection of people. The majority of lawyers look at law and work for the protection of property. I wish you had called on me when you were looking for a job, because about that time, just like this time, I'm looking for lawyers who are willing to fight against insurance companies to get the individual citizen who's had an injury or a misfortune or a death to get justice against a much stronger foe. How do you see the law working or not working as an overall tool of social justice? Is it something that's sick and has to be put to sleep, or is it working and simply needs to be improved?
Well, that's a very big question, George, that we could probably talk about all morning. But I oftentimes think, as I'm working through my cases and with my clients, I'm out at the jail a lot, visiting my clients or on video court, and I oftentimes wonder about the necessity of a period of incarceration and whether or not it really benefits anybody. Most of my clients have a substance abuse issue, okay, whether it's alcohol or some type of a drug they've fallen into, which is really an easily identifiable rehabilitative need. And I don't necessarily think locking them up is the best thing for them. But what I was getting at is I'm out there and I see how the guards interact with the inmates, and it's really actually very amicable. And I think about how it just seems to me, in some regards, a little ridiculous. If my client comes out there, I've got to do 10 days in jail. They're like, all right, we're going to put you in cuffs and take you back here. When in reality, I don't necessarily think it solves what the ails are of society. Alcohol and drugs may have caused it, but dealing with that, I think, is more important than just locking somebody up.
Well, I think your point is that most of these people need treatment, not punishment. And we can add to that, it's their family that's being punished because they don't have dad or mom at home. They've got extra expense. Nobody's bringing in the check. There's less food and more desperation of the people who are dependent upon the people who are locked up. And so we've actually accelerated the cause instead of the solution.
That's a great way of putting it, and I think there are people who will look at at that and say, well, that's their problem. They shouldn't have done what they've done if they didn't want to end up in jail and away from their families. But like you said, it sort of accelerates the problem. It becomes a negative feedback loop because they fall behind their bills, their family gets evicted, and that affects you and me and the rest of the community because now maybe we have to pay additional money to put a shelter over their family's head, or now when they get out, they don't have this base of stability that they might need. And so I take a bigger picture view of what we're trying to accomplish within our community. And sometimes just putting somebody away for a while is going to have a more detrimental effect on you and me and our neighbors than it would if we came up with a different type of a resolution.
Excellent point. Ryan, we're out of time. It's been a long-awaited treat to have you here. I wish you were helping me sue insurance companies. God bless you.
Thank you, George.
Thank you, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Well, that was interesting. I hope you agree. Attorney Ryan Ulrich gave us some great insights. His last thought rings with me. All of the people that get locked up, who is really being punished? Well, of course, the person who is locked up, but the person's family, the person's employers or employees, they all get locked up when someone is put away behind bars for a nonviolent offense, a person that is no risk to the society. Is that really smart? We are the most incarcerated state in the most incarcerated nation in the world. We spend more money on prisons than we do on education. And more than 90% of the people who are locked up were not convicted of any violent crime and are of no risk to society. Think about it. Is that where you want to put your taxpayer money? I don't think so. I'm George Curtis, and that's my opinion.